Slides into first gear very easily, a little bit high and a little bit denser, I guess. Let's go for the ever critical early second gear. Wow, that was smooth. Welcome back to the final stage of the clutch install on the Dino. It did take some time to send our very special Fiat 80 Mark starter bolts and nuts, as well as our exhaust manifold nut and our cable, our speedometer cable hanger nut, 2 out for plating at Van Nuys Plating. They came back very nice, a little copper colored, but they got it out before the end of the year, and that was super nice of them. So now we've installed the starter, and the tip here is you need to remove this heat shield to get your finger back to secure the nut in the back, and that also requires that you move the cable also, and the cable hanger comes out from that too. So once you get those in, you can put the bolts in, hang the top first before the bottom. And I did the bottom first because it was easy, and then I dropped the nut on the back on this one, and it was difficult. So always do install the top bolt of the starter first. Should you ever need to remove the starter on a USA car, you will have to remove at least 2 of the studs, as well as 4, as well as the exhaust system and the spacer manifold injectors there too. That's just a tip for if you have to deal with the starter. It's pretty involved. This case, I just had to get my hand back to the top and fit it in, and that required moving the heat shield out of the way. So we've got the starter in, it's tightened down, it cleaned it out, got the electricals refreshed and cleaned, and now we want to adjust the clutch and the final install. Moving over to our final adjustment, I have placed the access cover plate and the nuts and washers back on the cover there, as well as set up the adjustment by releasing both lock nuts at the end shafts with using an 11mm wrench. Now remember, one of these nuts is reversed, and if you start turning it and it does not move, try the other direction. That's I ran into that, and I started realizing. Now you want them both close to the center, as close as you can, and free moving like that, so that all adjustments are made with the moving center. This is not a nut, this is part of the turnbuckle itself. So let's start our turnbuckle with some coarse adjustments and then fine tune it. Rather than actually getting in and measuring it with a feeler gauge inside in the thrust bearing carrier to the pressure plate, which you can't get to anyhow, we're going to be doing the practical manipulation from the outside, as well as feeling it from the pedal friction. The Dino is a fairly heavy sprung clutch, so it's quite easy to see where the friction point is in it. Let's look at our specs now. Out here we have Ferrari OEM pair guides showing you need a 2mm tolerance between the end of the thrust bearing carrier and the friction disc, but you can never get in there to measure it. So what people usually do is look at assume those are tight, and then measure from the fork to the rear of the thrust bearing carrier. I don't like sticking any parts in that sealed bell housing. It looks really nice, and so I have already covered that up, and we're going to make coarse adjustments based on the outside of the turnbuckle. From that, remember, our free pedal play will be 25mm for the spec at where your foot hits the pedal. So we'll use that knowledge as well as skill in adjusting the turnbuckle. To set the previous videos, I've taken a lot of care with greasing all the bearings in here, the roller bearings, the olive bearing, as well as the pivot points in it, and things flow really easily. Now with the Dino clutch, adjustments come in with your 11mm wrench and move it all the way forward. And what I mean is that apply the wrench from the top and move it towards the front of the car. All right, and loosen it up to the point where you can turn it with your fingers. Okay, let's bring the lock nuts into the center there. I turned it the wrong way to start with, and bring the other one. So now they are not going to impede it. Now you can see I have the center nut is free to move. I do have to pinch it with my fingers. And you will rotate it as I see it clockwise. This way. That is. Okay, now that you know I can do that, I'll hide it. And as soon as I feel any tension that stops me from moving, boom, right there, back it off, half a turn. And that is an extremely good starting point for your course adjustment. Anybody who reads the online posts of John Corbatti will want to be informed by his very, very astute diagram here of how the setup is supposed to be when you look at it. This is the straight line here, and there is a 2 to 10 millimeter deviation. So when you actually look at it and you draw the line between this pivot and this stop here, you can see we are pushing about that 10 millimeters now. So that is a very helpful feel from the gut, is how close you're coming to it. Again, thank you, John Corbatti, Dino Master. I just went in the car, stuffed my foot in there, and felt there's quite a bit of free play. It is still very close. I think for our course adjustment, we did very well. But let's take our 11 millimeter and tighten it up just a little bit more. Again, if we're reducing free play, we're taking our wrench on the top and bringing it to that center nut and rotating it aft. This is the important measurement that you will use in the future. As the clutch wears, you will need to tighten up because the free play point will advance too much. And that's normal in the way of a clutch wears over 30,000 miles or so. But this is very easy. Release the lock nuts, put your wrench on the top, and rotate it aft. That would be tightening up the free play point. Let me go back in the car and see the action shot. Free play is very near the top. I think we've got it. So that's a way. 2 movements, a course adjustment, 2 fine adjustments. That's actually 3. There we go. We have just done everything in 3 adjustments. 1 course and 2 fine adjustments, and our clutch is set. Now we will relock the lock nuts, tighten them to their back ends, and lock everything down and prepare it for our first drive. All right. Now that we have set our clutch position with only 3 moves, 1 course and 2 fine adjustments, we want to lock it down. Here is our lockdown. We turn it this way to get to the end, and this way to get to the other end. No, I did this how many times? Never done this. With our 11 millimeter, and you do not need to wrench on this very hard. This is only a locking situation for it. One of the great things about having opposing threads on the turnbuckle for adjustment is tightening is both the same direction. That is, you will want to come over the top, tighten with the outboard edge, you move it forward. That is to the front of the car. Same motion for the other side. And so to tighten this, also move it forward. So now we have our final locked in adjustment, but I did not lock these extremely reefly tight, just enough because I anticipate probably 1 more fine adjustment is necessary. I'm going to take it for a ride, see how this feels, and you may need a little tightening. But now you know how to do it. If you need to tighten for less free play, you will put the wrench on the center and move it aft. If you want more free play, you put the wrench on the adjustment and move it forward. Final actual test before you start the engine is to release the handbrake. Make sure this is in neutral, no clutch depressed, and know that you can move the car and then shift into a gear, push, and see the resistance. You cannot press back because the clutch is engaged. I think we found our friction point within 3 easy steps. 1 course and 2 fine. That's how to do it. All by feel and without a feeler gauge getting pushed into the bell housing where yours truly could drop it. Let's go driving. Slides into first gear very easily. A little bit high and a little bit denser, I guess. Let's go for the ever critical early second gear. Wow, that was smooth. And remember, only 3 adjustments and I hit this from my third shift. Gear like butter. Now I'm just bragging. Oh yeah. This clutch is buttery smooth. Guys, we're back after the drive. I could go on and on chattering about how my new clutch is so great. If you have any hesitation with your transaxle, rather than blaming second gear, it may be your clutch. And this was not $1,000 for the cold clutch and everything. I have not changed the cable yet. I'm still enjoying the original one there, but I did buy 4 gallons of Redline 7590. NS. And because I did use assembly greases in this, I have a mind to change the gear oil in 200 miles. I'm going to think about that. Everything is going absolutely much better than I thought, and this clutch is just buttery smooth. If you can't hear me ranting and raving about it while I'm driving. It was a great time. Hope you get convinced that you too can do a DIY and change the clutch yourself. Thanks for coming along.